one of my favorite places in Mumbai, the Five Gardens in what is called Dadar Parsi Colony. It's the perfect setting for what I'm about to talk to you today. But first, just enjoy the space. So I'm here to tell you about a really exciting proposal that's been put forward by some eminent citizens groups, as well as experts, and that is the proposal for a coastal forest for Mumbai. Now, you know that the coastal road that has been built with such fanfare has been built by reclaiming land. Now, 100 acres of that reclaimed land is now available to Mumbai city to be used as an open green space. Can we have a coastal forest there? What is the coastal forest proposal? Will it ever become a reality? What are the challenges in making that a reality? Let's find out. A year after the contentious coastal road was opened to the public, the spotlight has shifted to the massive land bank that's become available because of it. Since the Supreme Court has said this reclaimed area can never be used for any residential or commercial purpose, Mumbai is on the cusp of an opportunity, the once in a lifetime kind. I'm speaking now with Shloka Nath, one of the key people behind this really exciting and, dare I say, Shloka, radical proposal, a coastal forest in the heart of the island city. How did this come about?
Well, I think we need radical ideas. So this is that time and age. Quite honestly, Anuradha, it's not a vanity project. It is one of the most functional responses to what is happening in the city today. We are literally losing ground to the sea. Our air pollution is, at very, very sort of severe levels today. And quite honestly, Mumbai is becoming an urban heat island. We need infrastructure that is not steel and cement. We have to move away from the gray and the black to green. We need a living lung, and that is really what we're trying to propose.
This is this truly incredible 100-acre opportunity for our city. It's a long stretch along our coast with some wider bands and some thinner, narrower pockets. And the way that we're envisioning it is something that is climate smart, that's reckoning with the realities of where we are in this moment. Our vulnerability as a city is only going to grow to a number of different climate threats and challenges. The debilitating deluge that we experienced pre-monsoon, that completely took us all by surprise, is just a small indication of the kinds of challenges.
Just in May, right?
Exactly.
Monsoons were not even supposed to have started.
Exactly.
Then.
And what we're thinking about is, unlike the grey infrastructure that has certain limits, that isn't able to act like a sponge, to hold, to absorb, to help regenerate, how can we turn to green infrastructure and imagine it in a way that's not like an ornamental garden, which is frankly there mostly for beautification and certain kind of, older experiences of a city.
It seems almost token. A manicured garden almost feels a little token. Like you need green, it's there, it's pretty. And also takes a lot of water sometimes to maintain.
Exactly.
Especially
and you need armies of people to kind of be taking care of it. It is resource intensive, as you're saying. And fundamentally, on the other hand, what a forest is as an ecosystem is something that appreciates in its value over time. The richness of its biodiversity, its resilience to different kinds of climate threats, its cooling capacity, its ability to hold water during a storm, all of those things grow over time.
I also want to point out that it's not just a climate conversation. This is also a massive justice and social equity issue. We have millions of informal workers in this city who have no access to shade. They are going to be bearing the brunt of increasing heat stress, which, by the way, is going to be the number one public health issue in India over the next 10 years, is going to be our rising heat levels in this city and in this country. We have no avenues for these informal workers to be able to experience relief. And it's not just informal workers, it's low income communities, including women and children. Where do these large segments of the population go? You know, a lot of folks have brought up the idea of using this ground as open space, maidans, public plazas. But those are also very gendered considerations because again, who uses maidans in this city? Young men and boys. Do you ever really see women, you know, out in these spaces? Do you see old people using these spaces? And it's completely inaccessible under the blazing sun for the largest portion of the day.
What about parks? Parks seem more gentler, more accessible to people. So why aren't you suggesting a lot of parks, which is actually part of the BMC's scope of work when they ask people to pitch to develop this space?
So I think the answer lies in your definition of a park versus ours. And when I say your, I mean the larger city.
Sure.
What we are saying is actually park, but really much more forested and much more wooded.
So more trees and wooded, like you said, and not shrubs.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We want interactive areas. We
Yeah.
want areas where people can walk through, they can engage, they can, have games if they want, outdoor activities, etc. We just want to be able to provide as much shade cover as possible, along with those necessary open spaces and interactive areas as well. I think the problem occurs when we hear park coming from other spaces. It tends to mean more concretized plazas, much more open cover than necessary, or in fact required for a city like Bombay. That's the gap.
It's important to see the coastal forest through a wider prism. Located in the heritage precinct of Fort is the Urban Design Research Institute, which has documented, researched, and advocated for Mumbai for over 4 decades. One of its trustees, industrialist and passionate Mumbaiker Cyrus Guzder, says, among many other things, a coastal forest will boost Mumbai's abysmally low green cover.
The coastal forest as a concept didn't just emerge as the only idea. In the past, we've talked about the deficiency of open spaces in the city.
Yeah.
And the deficiency is staggering. There are norms in the country of minimum open space per capita. And you might want to know that in Mumbai, compared with the roughly 19 square meters per capita in Delhi, for the 8 in Bangalore, we have 0.013 square meters per capita. It's just about a postage stamp for everybody to walk on.
Okay.
So the idea was, do we need parks? Do we need football fields? Do we need gardens? Why a forest? And in the course of the last 10, 15 years, while open spaces have been mapped by wonderful NGOs such as Nagar, who have then discovered that the government's open spaces calculation include traffic islands and the golf course and various other things. And so even that figure is
not a realistic
figure. It's an exaggerated figure.
It's an inaccurate
Nonetheless, the feeling was, do we need more open spaces like the hanging gardens or the oval Maidan? Now, what we have discovered in the last 10 years or so is that if you go to these, in quotes, open spaces, they're empty during the daytime because the heat has been rising, and now it's really not possible to enjoy an entirely non-treed, unshaded area. And recently, the call for another 100 ovals in Mumbai is, in my view, completely misconceived. And what we need actually is a different solution.
Sure.
So when the idea came up for a forest, it was altogether very attractive because it provided the alternative to the open space. But again, there are forests and forests. The cliche is, put a Miyawaki forest.
I was going to ask you, because that seems to be a buzzword, right?
It is a buzzword. And, Mr. Miyawaki, or whatever was the origin of this term, conceptualized this idea for a very fast-growing forest, obviously using fast-growing species, in a relatively small urban area. So you could green an area if you had a small area which you couldn't do much with. But for an area as extensive as the coastal road, which is like close to 100 acres, the idea matured as a group starting with the Breach Candy Residents Forum and then enlarged itself to residents outside the area. And then we found the need to bring in professionals. So we brought in planners, architects, hydrologists, botanists from as far away as Bangalore. And the consequence of this multidisciplinary team has been a set of iterations. And even the last visual that we put out as a coastal forest, we claim is actually just a simulated vision for the city and is quite open to further discussion.
Created with the expertise of arborists, permaculturists, architects, and landscapists, the coastal forest proposes the growing of carefully selected trees and shrubs, each offering unique functional and aesthetic benefits. From combating rising temperatures and sea levels to countering freak weather incidents and enhancing biodiversity, this forest is expected to offer a myriad advantages.
So if we look at this in different zones, we need a hardy and resilient layer which could have
this one, right? This what we are seeing here.
Exactly. And that could have trees like Kevda and Sultan Champa and various other truly resilient species that are able to deal with some of the pollutants coming from the coastal road, the winds and monsoon, lashing this stretch. In between, what we'd have is kind of transitional zones with a new kind of experience of what open space could look like. Recreation, play, the ability to just run without any kind of, barrier in place and let your imagination run wild.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. And that would have a few keystone species. We have a gift in our city of wonderful ficus species, each of which is a microhabitat. It could also have the kind of flowering shrubs and bushes and grasses that attract pollinators. I'm thinking about Kagar and Tagar and Kamni and so many others. And then closer to where the buildings are across the coast.
It becomes denser here, at least in the image. Why is that? Like, what's the rationale for that?
We'd want, closer to where people are for the benefits of, urban heat island mitigation that greenery provides to be in place. And you could have Arjun and Bakul and, Jamun, Mahua, other kinds of deciduous trees that are able to provide that. Not only the shade benefit, but also, frankly, the quite functional benefit. Imagine foraging for fruits and food in a coastal forest along our city. There's a culture in other cities of where you have these kind of commons, where you have, say a vegetable patch or a little space where you're able to get your fresh produce. We could imagine things like that in our city as well. Exactly.
Do you have any idea of what it would cost to create this proposal exactly as we see it now, or exactly as you envisage it at this point of time?
I think it's going to be a distinction between capex and opex. It is going to be upfront a larger amount, but over time, forests tend to maintain themselves. So the opex goes down over a much longer period. We don't have exact financials to share with you today. Those are very complex calculations that still have to be built out. We still need to understand very basic facts around the soil quality and what is possible, for instance. But I can tell you, in terms of modeling, this is typically how it works, that you actually will have lower maintenance costs
as time goes
by, which is why it's such an efficient climate solution for the city.
The Bombay Municipal Corporation, or BMC, will not pick up the tab for what it calls the Coastal Road Garden. Earlier this year, it invited the private sector to develop and maintain the space, as well as the 7-kilometer-long promenade created between Nepean Sea Road and Worli. We have heard that Reliance Industries has been selected for this massive public project. The question is, will Reliance consider the coastal forest proposal as a starting point? And more importantly, does the coastal forest idea have the BMC's buy-in?
I think the remarkable thing is that from what we understand is that if Reliance are finally awarded the contract, I believe it is waiting signature.
Yeah.
They have agreed that they will make, they will undertake the landscaping according to an agreed plan, and that they will not seek to have any commercial development from the land. Now, that's in a sense a very altruistic thing for a wealthy corporate to do.
Yeah.
And if they do that, then I think we
City
have
will-
to laud them.
Yes, and the
we
city
have to
will
laud them
be
for an extraordinary,
grateful. Yeah.
not just public service, but if they set about it the right way, they could create a model for how open space development can take place in other cities.
What do citizens need to do, whether it's via all the citizens groups that have come together, all the NGOs working in the city, people who are supporting this? What do we need to do to ensure that the BMC gets Reliance to stay in this zone?
Yeah. So I think that looking at, first of all, the appropriate relationships, I think the relationship of the city groups would be with government, not with the government's appointed agency. So much as we would like to be able to tell Reliance what
Be
they
at
should
that
do,
table, yes.
I think is a moot point whether
Yes.
they want to listen to us
Yeah.
at all. But
Yeah.
I think we can credit them with a remarkable background in greening areas. So we've heard amazing things about Jamnagar and the orchards that they've set up and the fruit that they've. So I think we could rely on them to have an enlightened approach. But the citizens have to do 2 or 3 things. Number one, not say this is final, because certainly the plan when it goes to Reliance and comes back to government will be transformed in one way or another. So they have to keep themselves together and strong, and they have to be, number one, on top of what they are doing professionally. So they must not disband this wonderful team that they've set up, and they must ensure that they keep in touch with government in a way that is consultative and not confrontationary. Because the moment they teach, if I can use this horrible phrase, the municipality on how to suck eggs, the municipality will turn away from them. I think they want to say, listen, we are the most affected people. We are the citizens, okay? You have to listen to us.
Yeah.
But we will dialogue with you in a constructive way. So far, I have to say, the BMC and the coastal road authorities have been extraordinarily receptive and cooperative. I'm taken aback that we can give them a ring and say, "Can we come and see you?" And they come this afternoon, and then we say, "Can you show us the plans?" And they put all the plans up. No, we won't allow you to photograph them, but we'll give you copies. And we'll wait for copies and come finally.
That come finally.
They come.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to hear, because this transparency is what is owed to us, isn't it, as citizens of Mumbai?
Of course.
What are some non-negotiables that between the public, between the private entity and government authorities, what should we co-create? I mean, of course, you've put out a proposal here, but let's say that all of it is not possible, or it doesn't appeal to people who can make this happen.
I think that's an amazing question and a really important one. The proposal we put forward still needs to be designed. It was always meant to be a piece of our imagination for what could be, really sort of putting out there, as my friend and colleague Aaran says, really a way to sort of rethink the future. How do we spark people's imagination? Of course, it's rooted in science and data and what's possible. But we really hope to build that out in a much more structured, concrete way. Yeah. Having said that, I do feel the non-negotiables really need to come back to aligning this with Mumbai's climate requirements. We do again have the data. The government has put out the Mumbai Climate Action Plan. We have, as I mentioned, the climate budgets that have been released. We have a sense of what are some of those critical and urgent areas of need for Mumbai. Any large open public space like this today that is being designed for the benefit of its citizens must speak to the needs of the city at the same time. So it has to speak to climate. The second aspect would be the equity and justice issue. It has to be accessible for all demographies that sit and exist and live in this city. It cannot be used by just one section of the populace alone, which is why, as I said, that definition of park is going to be really critical. How much open space versus shaded, how much interactive versus
Activity
ecology.
based,
And ecology and biodiversity.
So, I was reading the BMC's notice, which asked for expressions of interest from private companies to develop this land. And tucked in there, it says no commercial activity will be allowed on the above stretch of landscape garden, promenade and other allied spaces. However, subject to the permission of the Supreme Court, the volunteer agency may be permitted to take up such activities restricted to the allocated expenditure adhering to the upkeep of the above scope of work. Now, people who work in public policy understand how we have good laws, and yet you can see you go with a plan and then you get something else. Is that something citizens should be mindful of, should be watchful about?
I think ultimately this has to be seen as a public good. There is a lot of public trust that is being placed in the development of this. At the end of the day, it is taxpayer money that has gone into the reclamation. There is accountability attached to that. And I would just hope that whoever is involved, we are mindful of, the fact that, as I said, this has to be a gift back to the city.
As Mumbai awaits the fate of this space, it's good to remember how our beloved city by the sea has often been held hostage to the greed, corruption, and short sightedness of its custodians and stakeholders, as well as the indifference of its citizens. Mill-land redevelopment in south central Mumbai's Parel is a striking example of how Mumbai lost out on an integrated 600 acres of green spaces, civic amenities, affordable housing, and private real estate.
There was another opportunity when it presented itself, and that was when the mill lands were running to government in the late 80s saying, Datta Samant and his union have wiped us out, we are bankrupt, why don't you allow us to sell our land and develop that? The government said, hey, this land was given to you to run textile mills, not to develop. If you remember the history of this.
Yeah, I mean, and the judiciary played a very big role, isn't it?
Well,
in the way the final outcomes were decided. The Bombay High Court, then the Supreme Court, the final outcomes were...
It's a bit of a deja vu here because the High Court was extremely supportive of the initial and the Supreme Court overruled them. Exactly what happened with
the
regard
coastal
to
road.
the coastal road 30 years later.
Yeah.
But remember, if you look at the textile mills, by the time we came to the mid-1800s, the city of Mumbai extended up to the edge of Baikala. You had some wonderful buildings there.
Yeah.
But after that, you had open fields and swamp. So when the connecting road took place between Haji Ali and what is today Lotus at the Atria Mall, it closed off the ingress of the water into what is today the racecourse. That is why the racecourse is below sea level today. But it prevented water going all the way to Paidone, which is how Paidone got its name. It was actually from the western tides, not the eastern. At that point, the government said, look, we're giving you this land. They purchased land from all the farmers and encouraged the textile industry to set up textile mills. So when the time came for the textile mill owners to put up their hands and say, give us money to bail us out, and then we'll develop, government said, no, we will develop because now you return the lands to us. Or we will work out a scheme. And that's when Charles Correa, Deepak Parekh, and a few others got together. And this whole issue is beautifully documented in a wonderful book edited by Daryl De Monte called Mills for Sale. It's an important document. And Charles Correa had this concept for the city. It would have just been transformational as Central Park was to New York or the coastal road is to Boston, which is that you've got this 80 textile mills reduced to 60, then to 50. They all have some quite large chunks of land. And that whole area, remember, was 600 acres. Now,
I do remember. Just cover
to
that.
give you an idea of what 600 acres is, Ballard Estate is 2.5 acres. And Nariman Point is only 5 acres. So you had 600 acres available to you
In central Mumbai.
in central Mumbai. But
Yeah.
most interestingly, at the confluence of your western and central railway lines, it's amazing how if you look at the map, the lines come this way and then they diverge again. And that's where this part of central Bombay is. Heavily populated and mills in distress. Well, it was not easy to say that each mill should give up so much of his land to open spaces that you'd have fragmentation. So the Korea plan was unique in as much as it said, we'll pool all the land, we'll make sure that every mill owner gets back the equivalent of his earlier area and FSI to go with that. But what we'll then do is when the buildings come down, we will create a central park. We will put shopping and low-cost housing near the railway stations, and then allow higher and higher buildings to take place on the periphery. It would have been really transformational. The mill owners opposed it. The Bombay Environmental Action Group went to court and won in the High Court, saying, hey, you guys have started demolishing all the rest of it. High Court stopped the project. These guys went to the Supreme Court and got the whole order reversed. And we lost that.
So we don't have a clear piece of green open space. You have these tiny little, whatever suits the mill owners, new real estate developers, little, they're not even really gardens. They're just very token.
You said whatever suits the mill owners. It was really quite tragic and cynical the way the mill owners gamed the system and connived with government. The scheme of Charles Correa was called a one-third scheme.
1/3 comes to the city?
One third went
open space.
First, no, it went first to affordable housing for the mill workers who were going to be dishoused. The other 1/3 went to the city, not only as open space, but as amenities. You could put schools and markets there. And the other 1/3 stayed with the builders, with the owners. But the owners got the FSI for the other area which they'd handed over to the public. So they didn't lose. In fact, they got all this for free, really. The city would have got open spaces, workers would have got housing.
So that was one very big missed opportunity.
So what happened then? The open space was then defined as the space that would remain after you remove the textile mills. The mill owners said, no, we will repurpose these mills. So if you know where Palladium is today, McDonald's came there early. It wasn't McDonald's. The owner of the land said, this is my workers' canteen. And by such chicanery, so all the mill owners decided to hang on to their land. And one simple example in the Korea report is that of Jupiter Mills. It had 45,000 square meters. And you could give 1/3 of that away, so you know what that would come to. By the time they had plotted all their buildings and built a few more here and there, they ended up by saying, actually, the buildings that we can hold on to are 44,000 square meters. And they divided 1,000 square meters between amenities and housing. And that's how Parel was carved up. And look at the consequence to the city, where you now have a complete absence of open spaces.
Rampant real estate development in Mumbai means places like Dadar Parsi Colony are both special and rare. And no one is more aware of this than naturalist Katie Bagli, who lives here and has documented its diverse flora. She has heard of the coastal road proposal and is excited about it, just as I am, and just as perhaps you will be too.
So what does it feel like to be living in a place that is just surrounded by trees, this kind of dense tree foliage?
I know I'm very lucky when I go out in Mumbai proper and I see all the cacophony of the traffic. I really thank my stars that we are living over here, and I can never take them for granted. But if they are not there, I find a big part of my life missing. So I know I need trees. I need trees to breathe. They're just part of me,
You know almost every kind of tree that grows here.
At least in Parsi Colony, almost,
How many types of trees?
Oh, I think there are more than more than 60. I mean, I think this book has only 60, but we definitely have more. Yeah.
So tell me what are some of your favorites and why?
First of all, I love the rain tree because of its magnificence, the grandeur. It, you know, it displays.
Just the design, right? The way it grows is so beautiful.
Huge canopy. And there are other trees also. My mango tree is my favorite because it draws so much biodiversity. Birds and squirrels and bats. I have a mango tree outside my house and I love to see the bats in the mango season coming in the night, you know, to eat mangoes.
You've worked with a lot of children. And you know, children and getting them acquainted with nature and trees around them. What are some of the things that you see, you know, when you see children interact with rich green spaces? What do you find?
They are always enthused, you know, when they come for a nature trail. And at their eye level, they spot amazing things. You know, sometimes they might see a spider on a tree or some other insect crawling, and they point it out. They are like little detectives. And being out with it inside, you know, among the trees is definitely a magical feeling. You come back rejuvenated. Even children do, you know.
So Katie, you've heard about the Coastal Forest proposal and this conversation, this show, I'm trying to get more and more people to hear about the Coastal Forest. What do you make of this grand idea?
I think I just feel like saying, wow. It would be the best thing ever for Mumbai, you know, to have trees, the right kind of trees to withstand the waves and the strong winds of the coast, the oceans. And it's a double treat for Mumbai, you know, to have the coast and the forest over there. And of course, all kinds of benefits. I do hope it comes up, you know.
And I do hope that we get to walk in that forest one of these days.
Yes,
that the forest happens and then we can take a walk.
It would be just great. And there should be more such forests. We need so much greenery, honestly.
So are you going to show me some of your favorite trees?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Right.
The dog is coming with us.
Yes, he is.